Hi, this is Tim Hockley, Group Publisher with Redstone Media Group and Equine Wellness Magazine. Today, in our continuing series of innovation, we are speaking today with Dr. Randel Raub, Director of Research and Nutrition at Kent Nutrition Group,
the makers of Sentinel Horse Feed.
So the first question, when you compare extruded horse feed to pellets, there are definite differences in the size and texture, but what can you tell me about the more important differences?
One of the first ones, at least with ours, is it's not as dense as a pellet. So a volume of a pound of extrusion is greater than a volume of a pound of pelleted feed because it's not as dense, right? For a greater volume in a given meal, that horse takes a little bit longer to consume that pound of feed just because of the feed form. And that's a good thing. And then there's a host of digestive processes that are advantageous with extrusion as well.
We know that 75% of a horse's immune cells are found in the gut, which means feed is critically important for overall health. If a veterinarian is going to recommend extruded, what makes it a superior choice for digestion and gut health?
From a digestive perspective, when we extrude an ingredient, we're going to grind it about a third finer than we would if we were going to pellet it, right? So that finer grinding increases the surface area of that ingredient. If we increase the surface area, we increase the digestive opportunity for enzymes to work on that ingredient. Cooking process enhances digestibility. The finer grinding of the ingredients enhances the digestibility. I referenced earlier that the greater volume per pound, where they take a little longer, that can contribute to a greater digestive benefit as well. When you tie all these things together, we typically see about a 5 to 10% improvement in digestive efficiency. And when I reference 5 to 10%, that means you can feed about 5 to 10% less on a weight basis of an extruded product compared to a pelleted product, assuming the nutrient profile is the same, right? Now, from a direct immune benefit or health benefit, if you will, to the inside of that GI, it may provide some digestive benefits to overall health, because we're noticing these horses take longer to consume a pound of extrusion. Horses have to move their jaw to generate saliva. So the more jaw movements per pound creates more saliva. More saliva is a wonderful buffering agent for the stomach. That's a benefit and perhaps a deterrent for gastric ulceration. But the other elements that really affect those small intestinal enterocytes that lead to a healthier immune function in both you and I and any other animal on the planet, you start to look at prebiotics and probiotics that might be included in the actual formulations of these feeds. That's what helps facilitate a healthy microbiome in that small intestine.
Feeding a horse isn't just about what goes in. You also have to consider what the horse gets out in terms of nutrients and calories. Why would a veterinarian recommend extruded to clients who want their horses to get the most from their feed?
So we've been extruding feed since the early 1980s, right? So we really pay attention to, okay, here's the nutrient profile of the stuff going in before extrusion. Here's the nutrient profile that we can measure after extrusion. What have we lost between those 2 points, right? And you can do one of two things. You can add more of that ingredient at the beginning, knowing that you're going to maybe lose 20, 30, 40% of that ingredient post-extrusion. So then you're hitting the target that you want. So you can do that. The other thing that we do, particularly with ingredients or nutrients that are very sensitive to this heating process, is we will apply them like in an atomized spray post-extrusion. As they come out of the extruder, they're going down conveyor belt or whatever the process may be. We can apply some of those elements in a liquid form on the outside of those extruded elements that are just expanding. That liquid application gets sucked into these extruded particles quite readily. So you can approach that to ensure you're delivering the nutrients that you have listed on the tag. And with a finer grind, greater surface area, higher cooking temperature, and again, I go back to that extruded form, just provides a greater digestibility opportunity for the horse.
Maintaining a healthy weight is also crucial for overall equine health and wellness, but feeding requirements change seasonally. So what advice would you give veterinarians to pass on about weight maintenance in the spring, for example?
Ideally, you try to maintain the weight of that horse consistently, right? Throughout, regardless of the season, and adjust your feeding program accordingly. In the springtime, if you have horses that get turned out on pasture, there's a good chance that that's really lush spring pasture. They're going to put on a lot of weight rather quickly. You need to monitor that and be cognizant of that. You go into the fall and winter, you're relying on hay. Hay quality and hay sources can vary greatly depending on where you get them from and the time of year. Even though you've got a great supplier that they supply you with the best hay they can make every year, well, they can't make the best hay every year because it depends on the environment to some degree. So you need to be cognizant of that. And then you can adjust either the amount of hay you might be feeding in the winter. You may have to feed more if you got poor quality hay, or you may end up feeding more of the concentrate, the feed you buy in the bag, to adjust. For most horses, the research out there suggests for performance horses, for equine athletes, regardless of the discipline, the horses that consistently dominate a given athletic endeavor, condition score of 5. That's where they hover around consistently.
What advice would you give to a veterinarian who's recommending extruded feed to a client for the first time?
The same advice I'd give to anybody trying a new feed is that you introduce it slowly and gradually, even though extruded forms of feed are incredibly safe, because at least ours have a very low starch and sugar content. They have a high digestible fiber component. I still recommend that any feed changes you make over a 5 to 7 day period gradually, right? The other important thing, make sure you understand that that extruded pound is going to be a greater volume than that pelleted pound. That's why the other thing that we try to get horse owners to think about is don't feed by cans or flakes of hay, feed by pounds. How many pounds are you feeding that horse in a given scoop or per day?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Raub. That was very interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be very helpful to all of our viewers and readers.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. Have a good day.